VandeVere. And I am visiting with you for the very first time. I have never been to Colorado. But I will tell you, I love where you are located. You may feel lost up here, but let me tell you, if you're going to be lost, this is a good place to be lost. I grew up in East Tennessee, in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And so whenever I had time off, or whenever the family did good things, we were usually in the mountains of either East Tennessee or western North Carolina. And so I just had this funny feeling that I was going to enjoy coming to the Powell Valley. So when it came time for us to have a conference blitz, what's a conference blitz? It's not that we get out and play football. But what a conference blitz is, of course, is that we all visit one area, and we preach in different churches, and then we have a town hall on Saturday night after sundown. And so when it came time for southwestern Virginia, I raised my hand and said, I want to go to Powell Valley. They said, that's a long ways away. I said, that's okay. I said, I've always heard lots about it. I want to go see it. I bet you it's in a pretty part of the world. They said, that it is. And I will affirm the beautiful part of creation that you were in. Last weekend, I took a weekend off to go on a little vacation with my son. We went to Linville Gorge in North Carolina, which is very similar as well. And the colors right behind it. And so it's an amazing world we live in that God created, that even with the entrance of sin, and when we see the cycles of nature and the death of living things, which fall basically is, God still has made it a time of beauty to remind us of Him. And so anyway, I just want to say thank you for having me with you here today. It's my privilege and enjoy to be here with you. I did not come by myself today. I brought somebody with me. And I'll introduce you to him in just a moment. When we think of the conference, often if someone has been a member of the church for decades, you kind of have a sense of what the conference is. But most of the time when we're in a congregation, we have someone who has just started attending recently or within the last few months or last year or two, and they'll say the conference. Well, who is the conference? And we get the idea that the conference is an office somewhere with several guys who run around in suits most of the time and show up occasionally to preach, and that's the conference. Well, if we really, now, you're used to looking up front at the pastor, right? I want you to, this is going to take some flexibility now. I want you to move your head and look at each other. Go ahead, look at each other across the church. And you can say, we are the conference. Okay? We are the conference. Now, the interesting thing is the conference is not made up of individuals, but the conference is made up of churches and schools. There's about 180 churches, and by the time you tack on the schools, we're close to 200 institutions in Virginia, in Maryland, and in the Washington, D.C. area that belong to the Potomac Conference. And so think of the United States of America with 50 states, okay? What we have is 200 institutions that make up the conference itself, okay? And so the conference says we need to be able to hire pastors, we need to be able to hire teachers, we need to be able to coordinate efforts together. And so we need to select some guys and gals to help us do this, to kind of organize it. That's where I come in. I play part of that role, okay? But we are not the conference. It's the churches. You yourself make up the conference. And our job is just to coordinate the different tasks that you have asked to be done. And in fact, we do this through the executive committee, which has representatives from all the different area churches who come together and make decisions. Bill Miller, the president, or myself, we don't sit there and say, well, I just decided today that this is going to happen here. And we decided that. No, that's not what happens. It's passed through, just like a school board, it's passed through the executive committee. So that's how we operate. That's how God has organized us. And generally, it has bumps in the road. And sometimes the ship, springs a leak here, the good ship Potomac Conference, and you have to kind of plug a leak here. And sometimes it runs off the rails here. You got to get things back on the rails. It's human. You read, by the way, read Corinthians lately? Yeah. Woo! Scary stuff in 1 Corinthians. So the church is not perfect. The conference is not perfect. The churches and schools are not perfect. But we are traveling together on this road. Now, but even though we travel together, we also travel alone a good share of the year, getting away in our beautiful valley in Cal Valley. And so it's good to hear things that are going on amongst some of the other institutions. And this is where my friend comes in. Recently, Eleazar Fajardo has joined our staff. Eleazar, come on up. He is in charge of the, come on, no, I want you to come all the way up here. I'm going to make you come all the way up here. Eleazar he is a man of many abilities. He has pastored, but he also has a great skill at hands-on stuff. We were talking about building stuff today, masonry and all that. I'm terrible at that kind of stuff. I know what a hammer and a screw are, but that's about it. You know, and so I need someone like Eleazar to help me out. He's in charge of the facilities at the conference office and all our parsonages that we have for pastors and teachers to live in. And he consults and helps us with safety issues around the conference as well. And what Eleazar is going to do with us for us today is he's going to share 2 or 3 stories of things that are just happening in other places so that we can hear and be encouraged about what is going on. And next year when we're meeting with some other areas, we may tell a story of something that's going on in Powell Valley. A couple years ago, several years ago now, when it looked like the school was going to be closed. And through the efforts of the churches in the area, funds were raised and the schools kept open. We told other churches about what was happening in Powell Valley so that they could be encouraged. Now it's our turn to be blessed by hearing about what's going on somewhere else. So Eleazar, help us out and tell us a couple of stories this morning.
Well, good morning.
Good morning.
I'm so happy to be here without traffic and smoke. I grew up in the city, Guadalajara, Mexico, and it's concrete all around. We put plants only in small containers because there's no ground. When I was walking or driving to here, I remind me one of the verse. No, you know this, Isaiah 52. Verse 7, how beautiful up in the mountains are the feet for him who brings good news. You are very blessed. You are preaching in this area. You are giving peace to others. And even if you think you are far or someone thinks you are far, you are in a good place.
Amen.
And I started a few weeks ago, I can say 4 months ago, working with the church, and it's a privilege to know people, for the first time. And I want to share the church are continuing preaching, and this year 800 people become baptized and are reaching in the conference, and 150 become by profession of faith.
Amen.
And it's something because it's growing. And the same, one church become organized, and 2, I forget it, the small, yes, companies become organized too. And it's a bless. It's a bless. I can tell you about schools are growing, more teaching, more teachers become part of the conference. I can tell you they have more than 100 kids with glasses, in some school with books, some held festivals and programs to help others. But 2 churches, Alexandria and Bethesda, I think they become together to help 18 Christians in Virginia with preaching, using a video, and it's a bless. How people can hear about the gospel because computers and cell phones and everything, because they are not allowed to contact with anyone. 18 Christians. And I will tell you really quick, I work with contractors. Some are Adventists, some are not. And one of them help me with replace a roof. And we deal. He gave me a very good price. He installed the roof. And when I was talking with him the last time, I asked him, how you hear about the church? And he said, I was drunk when a little kid came to me and said, you need to leave that. And I started praying about it, and I dropped the alcohol.
Amen.
And let me tell you, you can check in the treasury department, and he gives to the church 32% of the tithe.
Wow.
And I asked him, how you give me $6,000 to replace a roof for a house with 25 yards, with $6,000? And he said to me, I have a lot of work. It's enough for me. It's something like encouraged to, I don't give 35 or 32% of my tithe to the Lord. Even for me, it's shocking. And I give it to you this because the church is growing around the world. The church is only not building more facilities, it's building hearts, like the Bible study this week. We are the living rocks, and God is the architect. He's building our church, and I hope you don't forget that. And that is the good news for you.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Brother Fajardo. God assures us that the church, as weak and feeble as it appears, is the one object on earth that he holds in his supreme regard and love. He's looking down at us in Palo Alto, saying, those are my people. Everybody else said, well, there's not many of them. Have some fancy going on. God said, they're my people. I love them. I gave my life for them. And they're doing great things for me. Only in the light of eternity we're going to understand how God not only has blessed us, but how he has taken our feeble, weak efforts and turned them into mighty acts for the kingdom. So, even so, come Lord Jesus, I'm eager for that day when we get to see completely what God has accomplished.
Amen.
Through us as church, his bride. Amazing. What are some of life's big events? Now, I feel a little chained, because sometimes I like to run around. Sometimes I have a little, don't like, this is a court, I don't want to, I'm just going to speak up, and I hope I can speak loud enough. Because I feel, I just feel sometimes imprisoned behind a wall. I'll bet there's some. What are some of life's big events that we wait for with some nervousness? Listen carefully. What are some things that you've waited for, but... Children. Okay, yeah, okay.
Waiting outside. That baby is good.
Waiting upside. Yeah, well, yeah, and these days you don't get to wait outside. Usually they drag you inside. You started, you're going to be right here with me now. We're going to finish this together. Yeah, okay, so waiting for that baby to come. That's a big deal. Yeah, okay. What's something else maybe? What's another big event?
Trying to get teenagers to listen and
Oh, I can't believe that. My teenagers always listen. Yeah, right.
Speaking of teenagers, how about graduating from school?
Graduating from school. You think that day will never come, it seems like. Yeah, that's right. And now at my age, I wish I was back in school. I seem a little easier back in school now, actually.
Getting adults to listen.
What's that?
Getting adults to listen.
I've never thought of these as big events, but sometimes that can be a big event. what about finding out whether you're going to get a job or not?
Yeah.
You know, if you've interviewed for a job, yeah, that's a big deal. Now, so here's my question today. How do you wait? How do you wait? Now, you say, what do you mean, how do you wait? Well, what do we have that we have nervous, what? Nervous habits that start to come out. What are some of the nervous habits that might be exhibited as you wait for a big event?
Nail biting.
Nail biting. No, that's not my thing, but that's my wife. Okay, something else.
Pacing.
That's me. I mean, I can walk around, and, you know, I just kind of go in circles, I go back and forth, I walk, yeah, that's me. Something else. How do you wait?
Patient.
Now, let's just be, now we're in church now. No telling lies now. Now, we're waiting patiently, yes. By God's grace, we can wait patiently.
Yes.
Very good. Okay, another one.
I hear a lot. Is that going to happen? When is it going to happen?
We ask lots of questions. Yeah, it comes out through verbalization, right? If we're not being patient, it's kind of like, you know, it's like, when are we going to get there? Well, we just left the garage. It's 600 miles to go. That's what I used to always tell my parents, you know, on trips. What about waking up during the middle of the night and not being able to go back to sleep? Oh, yeah. Yeah, my wife always says it's a guilty conscience, but I don't think so at all. You know, yes, I start to hash over problems. And they just kind of start going around and around and around. And an hour and a half and 2 hours later, I look at the clock and I'm still awake. I see some heads going up and down. Yeah, how do we wait when something major is going to happen? And so we do this as individuals, but I'll have you know that there's a question that I have that I think God is interested in. And the question is, how do we wait as a church?
On our knees.
Okay, on our knees, keeping busy. These are all good answers. How do you wait? Now, those are good answers that we would expect, but is it true? How do you wait as a church? Now, our text today talked about waiting. In Titus 2, and I gave verse 13, and so what was read was perfect. But actually, the sentence starts in verse 11. As you were reading it, I said I should have started at verse 11. In chapter 2 of Titus, it says, "For the grace of God that brings salvation has appeared to all men." What's the grace of God that brings salvation? Jesus, of course. Yeah, that's right. So, Jesus, the Messiah, has appeared to all men, Paul says. Okay? It's the grace of God. Brings salvation. It teaches us to say no to ungodliness and worldly passions, to live self-controlled, upright, and godly lives in this present age. And now in verse 13. While we wait for the blessed hope, the glorious appearing of our great God and Savior, Jesus Christ. Often we speak of the blessed hope. But what we don't often speak of course, is the issue of waiting. Waiting. Yeah, we know how hard it is to wait for big events like we've talked about. And I even think of children. How do children wait for Christmas and opening of presents? Are they patient? No, they're not patient at all. In fact, they may go, first of all, they go down and they sit by the presents under the tree, right? And they're kind of, they may even pick them up if you're not looking and shake them, And then if you're not getting up early enough, what do? Damn, Mom, it's time to get up. It's Christmas. It's 4 in the morning. That's okay. It's Christmas. So waiting for that blessed hope. It's not just a present being opened under a tree, but that that blessed hope when fires in California no longer happen, when earthquakes cease, when droughts are no more, when eternity ushers in peace and harmony and joy, the blessed appearing of Jesus Christ. But we have to wait while we get there. Well, we're going to look at a story today about a fellow named Philip. And in Philip, we're going to discover two things. You know, it's always good, I learned in speech classes, you're going to tell people what you're going to preach about, and then you preach about it, and then when you're done, you tell them what you just got done preaching about. And that's how you're supposed to do it. So I'm going to tell you ahead of time what we're going to talk about today, okay? But in the story of Philip, what we discover is that there's two things we mainly should be doing, and that is we should be caring for people's needs, and we should be preaching the good news about Jesus, the good news of the kingdom. Those are the two things that we should be doing. You know, God hasn't told us 1,000 things to do, praise the Lord. We have a hard enough time keeping track of 2 things. But as we look at the story of Philip, we discover that this is what God has asked us to do while we wait. Not to be sleepless, not to pace back and forth, not to pick fights with each other. Not to argue over the color of the carpet in the sanctuary. But we're to be caring for needs and preaching the good news of the kingdom. Let's look together in Acts chapter 6, verse 1. Philip is first mentioned in Acts chapter 6. And as we look there, we discover that Philip is not one of the most famous fellows in the Bible. You know, often when we think, well, who's your favorite Bible character? Well, King David. I'm named after King David. Okay, so I like that. You know, what about Abraham? That's always Abraham's a good fellow. Daniel. Oh, Daniel's a hero of ours because he had visions and dreams of prophetic significance. Besides that, he got thrown in the lion's den. That must have been a little exciting. And so we think of these, if we turn to the New Testament, well, we think of Peter. He got to walk on a lake. That had to be exciting in a storm. And then what about Paul? Boy, Paul got to travel all around the Mediterranean, and it wasn't on a cruise. At least not the cruises that we expect. So we think of these heroes in the Bible. Somehow, I don't think I've ever heard anybody say, well, Philip, he's my guy. But the story we're looking at today is the story of Philip. And in chapter 6, in verse 1, we're told that the Grecian Jews, among the believers of Jesus, they complained against the Hebrew Jews. Oh, by the way, so they were human too?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You know, the hardest thing for us to realize is we're all human.
Yeah.
And our socks all stink the same. Somehow we think Christians have overcome that. Ain't true. And when we look at the Bible, we say, man, these people all had it together. No, they didn't. They were a mess. And there was complaining in the church. Surprise, surprise, surprise. It has nothing to do under the sun. They weren't complaining over the color of the carpet in the church because they didn't have churches. They didn't even have their own synagogues. But they were complaining because one of the things is that the widows were taken care of by the community. They didn't have Social Security Administration. They didn't have food stamps. They didn't, different society. But what they did was the church got together, they collected food, and they passed it out on a daily basis to those who really had no way to earn it. Ladies weren't really allowed to go out and become carpenters back in the day. Okay, things have changed, which we're happy for, but that's just the way it was. But they said, those who are passing out the bread, this was kind of insinuated, those who are passing out the bread, they're being a little biased toward those believers who have the Greek background. We would say they're being a little racist. But we don't like that term. But they're saying they're being ignored, and you're taking care of your Hebrew widows, but not the Grecian ones. So again, nothing changes. And the reality of it is we do usually take care of people who we understand their speech. They look like us and they act like us. That's reality. We don't like to admit it sometimes, but that's just kind of our natural. And so, but by God's grace, we overcome that. And we take care of people who talk different and act different and look different. Okay. Nicanor, Timon, Parmenas, and Nicholas. By the way, are those Hebrew names?
No.
No, they're Greek names. They chose individuals who were Greeks to make sure as well that the Greek widows were taken care of. They were sensitive to different cultures and different races. By the way, that's a lesson for us. Should we just tell people who have different cultural expectations to go away and leave us alone? They didn't. That's a pretty profound lesson. I won't digress into that area, but the point is that's a powerful lesson. But this is where Philip shows up. He's just one of these 7 Greek fellows who's going to help take care of the widows. Now, what's interesting is the Bible doesn't say anything about how to take care of the widows. Because apparently Philip was blessed by the Holy Spirit, called by the Spirit. He did a lot more than just pass out food. In fact, what he said was, he went and did a lot of preaching. But let's not forget that he started by taking care of others' needs. That is important enough that God puts that story in the Bible for us to understand that gospel ministry starts with taking care of those who have needs.
Amen.
Amen.
If we just want to talk about the preaching, we've missed an important part of the Bible. In fact, Dorcas, later on in the book of Acts, this is a sermon about Dorcas, but Dorcas, her ministry of taking care of people's needs was so important that God gave her back to the church after she had died. God saw that it was that important to the church at that moment in time, and He allowed Dorcas to be given life again.
Amen.
So that needs could be taken care of. So let's not forget how the story of Philip starts. He's taking care of people's needs. And it wasn't just that they were handy at passing out food. In fact, the apostle said in verse 3 that they had to choose 7 men who were full of the Spirit and wisdom. So don't just say, let's just give taking care of needs to some individuals who just don't quite get it. And we don't know how godly they are, and they're not very smart. Maybe they can take care of something. No. This is a high priority. Taking care of people's needs involves having the Spirit and being full of godly wisdom. Because sometimes you can think you're helping someone and actually hurt them. And maybe you need to have the wisdom to know when to give something or when to give a helping hand. Or to teach somebody to do something for themselves. I mean, there's wisdom. There's a lot of stuff to be balanced in this equation. But at one point, Paul says, take some people off the needy list because they shouldn't be there. Oh boy, that was tough love. He said they should be out working. That takes some wisdom and guidance of the Spirit to work through those kind of things, doesn't it? So, anyway, important part of ministry. One of the things we do while we wait is we take care of people. And Philip, as he was called into ministry, started with taking care of people's needs. It's different for everybody. My home church is the Church of Waynesboro, up in near Stanton, where I work. And one of the things that the church I attend, when I get to go to church, there is they're part of the rotation every winter to house homeless individuals for a week in the basement of the church. The church is banded together the area to allow homeless people to sleep in the warmth of the church basements and to feed them a meal.
Amen.
And so this is part of the way that it goes to helping the needs. And that's a worthy way of doing that. Not every church is the same thing. Some churches, it's their school where they help individuals. I know some schools where the vast majority are not children of members of the church. But their parents may be incarcerated. And so in some ways, it's a very physical need that is being given those children to be given an education so they can make it through life. Well, the parents are unable to do that because of their own difficulties and problems, yeah. But which one of us doesn't have difficulties and problems? So, and this is not a question I expect you to give me an answer. This is not a quiz. But how has God called you to meet people's needs in this mountain kingdom that you're blessed with? expect that whatever God has called you to in various ways, that He wants to begin in finding how Powell Valley can help take care of the needs of others. Maybe through your school, maybe through some other avenue. So, pray about it, contemplate it. And if He's already laid that burden on you, you do it, then God bless you and keep going. Don't stop. Well, that's not the last we hear of Philip. And so the story of Philip continues. And he kind of goes quiet for a moment. It goes back to the apostles, and some persecution on them, and so on and so forth. But then what happens is that back in verse 8, Stephen, the chief of the deacons, was stoned, and the disciples, many of them were scattered, and Philip was among those. And so Philip, in chapter 8, appears back again. And he appears in verse 5. It says, Philip went down to a city in Samaria and proclaimed the Christ. There, now, that sounds a little strange, right? The Christ. Well, that's because we say Jesus Christ as if Christ is His last name. That's not true at all. Christ was a title. It was basically Jesus the Messiah. And so Philip is going and saying, I am proclaiming the Messiah. And so he heads to Samaria to do this. Now, so as he goes, Philip has this story that's recorded here that follows. There's a couple stories. Philip takes up most of chapter 8. And I'm going to concentrate on the second part of the chapter. Because Philip is used by the Spirit in mighty ways. He goes to Samaria, he ministers, and he heals the sick, and he casts out evil spirits. And there's great joy in the city. And so ministry is going well. I mean, Philip is feeling the power of the Spirit, and you're excited when you see ministry doing well. So maybe Philip was thinking of setting up camp there. God had other ideas. And as God brings His other ideas before, we're going to be taught, again, lessons of how we are to wait. We know we're supposed to care for people's needs. We know we're supposed to preach the kingdom. And this is what Philip did. When he was tossed out of Jerusalem, we had to get out of there because it was unsafe. He went, and he didn't say, well, I'm going to go on just vacation. He went preaching the gospel. He went and proclaimed the Messiah in Samaria. But now, let's get to this. As we're doing these things, caring for needs, preaching the good news, there are at least 8 expectations that I think we should expect to happen in our Christian life. And we're going to discover those now in the story of Philip. And one of the expectations is that the Spirit leads. That's number one. The Spirit leads, and He doesn't leave you in the same place, in the same spot, doing the same thing. Philip is in Samaria. Things are going well. He's excited. He's ministering. And then suddenly in verse 26, it says, now an angel of the Lord came to Philip. I wonder how. Was he praying? Was he walking on the road? I don't know. But the story says the angel came to Philip and said, go south to the road, the desert road that goes down from Jerusalem to Gaza. Well, now, you have to understand, Philip isn't in Jerusalem. If we had a map, and I'll probably get this backwards, so you'll forgive me. Let's just say Samaria is up here, Jerusalem is here, and Gaza is over here on the coast of the Mediterranean Sea. Philip's not in Jerusalem. Philip's in Samaria. It's about 40 to 80 miles away. Ever walked 40 to 80 miles? No. I've run 26, and it's a long ways, let me tell you. They weren't into running marathons, at least the disciples. There's no record of the running marathon. And so this is going to take a little effort. There's not a car to take, there's no train. Philip doesn't own a chariot. I'm sure he said, Lord, I just want to stay put. Your blessing in Samaria is good, God. Don't you think you should stay there? Let's build a bigger church. Well, thankfully for us, it doesn't record that Philip argued in any way like that, or he suggested that. And he said, okay, God. And so, after the expectation that the Spirit is going to lead us to do something different, and in a different way, the next expectation is one of obedience.
Amen.
Now, this can be tough. I'm sure, now I'm going to assume something, because I don't know a lot that's going on. It's always dangerous when you come into a church to preach, okay? Because you get yourself in trouble. I'm going to assume for a moment that the church greatly appreciates Chuck. Okay? Because he met me, he had taken care of me, he taught the lesson, he told me what to do. And so I'm just assuming that Chuck's a good guy. And you appreciate it. And he felt God's calling to move from Knoxville up here to Colorado. Aren't you glad for that? Yeah. What happens if God calls him somewhere else? Are you kidding me? We need him right here. Isn't that right? Yeah. Do you think the people in Samaria were happy to see Philip go? They said, wait a minute. Who's going to do all the miracles? Who's going to organize the carrying ministry in Samaria? Who's going to preach the gospel? I'm not told. But when the Spirit leads, we better do what he says. Even if it doesn't seem to make sense. Amen. Even though it may upset. So my advice to Chuck is if God calls him back to Knoxville, he better go and I'll come help pack his truck. Now don't shoot him. But I hope you'd be there helping pack his truck too. Because God has plans that we do not understand. We just don't. Because when something is going good or we feel something's necessary, how in the world did God change? God did. He said, I need you down to head toward Gaza, Philip. Yes, it's a long ways, but you'll be okay. I'll give you the strength. And so, Philip obeyed. And he headed down the road. Verse 27 says, so he started out. Well, in verse 27, as the story continues, it says, on his way, he met an Ethiopian eunuch, an important official. As he was on his way. Now, I wondered if Philip thought that maybe God's mission for him was in Gaza. You don't know sometimes. But God doesn't always tell us. But he brings opportunity. Here's the third expectation. First one is Spirit leads. Second one, obedience. Third expectation, or I guess I'm on the, third expectation is that, my memory is so bad, my third expectation is I'm getting old. My third expectation is that the opportunity is brought by God in strange and unusual places where we did not expect it. So God brings opportunity. Not perhaps where Philip thought. Philip thought maybe opportunity was in Jerusalem. Nope. Well, okay, maybe opportunities in Samaria. Well, God blesses there. But God has more opportunities. This time it was on the road. Not in Gaza, but on the road. And so when you start the day, you have no idea what opportunity God's going to bring. You say, I'm just going to the grocery store. Maybe God has opportunity. I'm going to fill the car up with gas. Maybe there's a opportunity. I remember I was at a set of pastors' meetings once. Got done. Was driving up Interstate 81. I was pastoring in Maryland at the time. So I was driving up the road at about 75 miles an hour. I was probably exceeding the speed limit. Suddenly there was this bang! I looked out the back window and there was this black puff of smoke. That's always a bad sign when you look out your window and you see a black puff of smoke. And the car started making awful noise. Clank, clank. And the car was stopping. I just happened to be at an exit. Pull off the exit. Pull off the side of the road. Turn the car off because it's still bad things are apparently happening. I looked under the car. There is a bunch of oil draining onto the road. This is not good. Apparently the engine through a drive shaft right through the engine block basically. And the car was toast. This is bad news. My wife was an hour away. She's busy with our kids. I'm stranded. I just lost my car. This is not a good thing. A bad day. Record comes. Good news, there's a junkyard junkyard only a mile away off the exit. That wasn't that convenient. The Lord made sure my car died right by a junkyard. Loaded it up. Within that mile, I discovered that the driver of the wrecker, he had just gotten divorced. And he had all this turmoil about this relationship that he lost with his wife. And it only took 5 minutes. And before it was all done, I was praying for him and his marriage. Never seen the man since. I don't remember his name. Maybe he's on 54, I don't know. But the reality of it is, God brought this opportunity, allowed my car to die on that spot, so that fella could come by and I could pray for him. I have no idea what the result is. I won't be looking. What opportunity is God going to bring you, even yet this afternoon? Or maybe Sunday. Maybe at Fall Festival tonight. Maybe Monday. So as verse 27 continues, that this eunuch was sitting in his chair, and he was reading the book of Isaiah, the prophet, we're told. And the Spirit told Philip, go to that chariot and stay near it. Well, isn't that a bit awkward? Go stand by the chariot? What if God tells you to go stand by a car in the Food Max parking lot or somewhere? Doesn't that feel going to be a bit strange if someone's sitting in the car and you just kind of stand there? Why could you stand there? Well, God told me to go stand near the car. So Philip goes, and in verse 30 it says that Philip hears the man reading Isaiah. And Philip asked him, this is kind of bold. By the way, now that I'm standing here kind of eavesdropping on what you're doing, do you understand what you're reading, Philip asked? Well, how can I? Man said, unless someone explains it to him. There's another expectation. God wants you to explain some things to other people. Now, sometimes we get stuck in our heads as to what it is we're to explain. Sometimes we think it's the 2,300 days. So I don't know anything about the 2,300. I've heard the 2,300 days, right? I understand that it predicts the time of the end, and we're living the time of the end, and so that's good. Okay. But I can explain that to somebody? I need a chart, prophetic time, and Daniel 9 comes into it. Oh my goodness. God probably, he may ask you to explain the 200 days, but it's doubtful. But maybe he wants you to explain to someone how to pray. You know that? Maybe he wants you to explain to someone how to pray before you discipline your children. Or how to get help. Maybe you've been an alcoholic in the past. You've gotten help by God's grace. And maybe you used a 12-step program for it. And maybe you can explain to someone how God used it to rescue you. What is it that God wants you to explain? God wants you to explain a path that is going to lead whoever you've come into opportunity with, that contact. He's going to have you to explain what they need. They have a need that you have the ability to explain. Now, Philip had the ability to explain what was going on in the book of Isaiah about the Christ. And that's why God had brought them, because he could fulfill the person's need. God's going to bring you into contact with someone who you can explain to them what they need and what will help them come closer to Jesus. So be ready to explain what you do know. And the explanation may not be done quick and easy and just on the spot. By the way, is there a time limit when I'm supposed to be done by the way?
Well, if you want to eat.
Yeah, if I want to eat,
your time schedule.
Yeah, I know. Okay, Ellie, how hungry are you, man?
Yes.
Okay, man, I get on a roll, though.
Follow the Spirit.
I get on a roll, and that's a problem.
We'll find somewhere to
We'll make it.
eat the food.
Yeah, we'll make it. So in verse 31, And the eunuch says, how can I? Unless someone explains it to me. So he did invite Philip to come up and sit with him. Well, that was a step up, so to speak, from standing by the chariot. That's good. He said, come sit beside me. Tell me about this. So Philip got up with him, and then the eunuch asked, who is the prophet talking about? God may not ask you to explain intricate passages of Scripture, but one of the things that at some point He will ask you to explain is how much you love Jesus and what He means to you.
Amen.
And how He is the Messiah of your life. Now don't get too enamored with that word. Don't get too intimidated by it. The Messiah of your life simply means that Jesus is your Lord and your Savior. He saves you from the power of sin. And not only that, He sets you on a new course. And now you take the orientation to obey Him. And not just whatever kind of comes by. So at some point, in the explanation of whatever it might be, God just is going to want you to say just a word or two about what Jesus has done for you, how much He loves you, and how much joy you give to follow Him. That's it. And that's assuming, of course, that you've allowed Jesus to forgive your sins. And that you're allowing Him to be Lord of your life. Maybe you did once, but maybe not today, maybe not recently. If that's the case, then Jesus is an opportunity to make things right with God. He hasn't gone anywhere. The Messiah still wants to be your Savior and your Lord. So make it right with Him today. And then when He brings you opportunity in the future, He sets you on the right path with somebody. And you're explaining some aspect of God religion. Remember at some point that He just wants you to say how much Jesus loves you. And how Jesus can be their Lord and Savior too. As the eunuch asked, who's the prophet talking about? And in verse 35, Philip began with that very passage of Scripture and told him, what did he tell him? The good news about Jesus. Is Jesus good news to you?
Amen.
Good news isn't usually told with a frown on your face.
Right.
You need to get right with God. Don't you know you're messing your life up? Get your act together. You must be your parents must be ashamed of you. Good news is usually told with a smile on your face and with happiness and joyfulness that God has a better way for you and maybe for them too. And so there's hope. There's excitement. It's good. If we're telling people about Jesus and it comes out as bad news, then we've got something messed up.
Yeah.
It's good news about the grace of Jesus. It's not bad news. It's good news. So Philip began with that very passage of Scripture and told him the good news about Jesus. And verse 39 mentions that they were traveling along the road. The other expectation we need to have is not everything happens at once. It happens while you travel together. Are we willing to climb up in the chariot with people and travel with them? Or do we expect them just to kind of, maybe Philip just said, well, I want to stand here by your chariot, and I'm going to tell you about Jesus and what you read about in Isaiah, and okay, accept, now, done. Come on. Is it 5 minutes enough? Is it like, we love instant macaroni and cheese. We love microwaves. We want instant and microwave Christians. Or, it's crazy. Microwave admins. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. You think about those disciples. These people walked with Jesus himself for 3 years. Did they get it?
No.
Oh! Jesus was there and said, by the way, when you're converted. Jesus says, 3 years with me, you haven't been converted yet. My goodness. We have to travel people. So when God brings us into opportunity with people who we explain there's a better way of life and it centers around Jesus, what Jesus did to us, don't expect them to be put in the microwave and then to start popping with love for Jesus immediately. Go travel with them. Get in the chariot with them. Travel in life with them for a while.
Amen.
I remember I was giving Bible studies to this couple. And the lady knew something about Seventh Adventists. She'd had some really bad experiences with them. And we started off, and the very first time we sat down and opened the Bible together, she says, I'm happy to study with you, Pastor Dave, but you're not going to convince me on the Sabbath. Don't even go there. I said, okay. I said, no problem. I said, let's just study together. Let's just see where God takes us. That's fine. So I went 1 week, went 2 weeks, went 3 weeks, went 4 weeks, 5, 6, about maybe week 7, we got to the Sabbath. Guess who suddenly wanted to hear about the Sabbath? Wasn't me. I just did the Bible studies with her. And by that time, God had moved on her heart. We had traveled long in life, further than we were now, 2 months down the road, and suddenly she wanted to hear about Jesus and the Sabbath that Jesus had made. Well, good, let's talk about it. Now, it may not be 2 months. It may be 2 years, maybe 20 years, it may be 30 years. Travel with people in the chariot until they're ready to make a decision for Jesus. There's no record that Philip says, well, you're a slow learner, you're a dunce, I'm getting out of the chariot. Keep traveling. Keep traveling. The last 2 expectations along the way is that people are going to decide for Jesus. This lady who didn't want to hear about the Sabbath. About 6 months later, I had the joy of dunking her in the baptismal pool.
Amen.
Amen. Hallelujah. It was a good day. We can expect people to make decisions for Jesus. Let's not expect people not to make decisions for Jesus. Let's expect them that they're going to make a decision for Jesus. As the Spirit leads them, at some point along the road, they're going to turn to us and they're going to say, what prevents me from being baptized here? There's a pool of water. And we're going to say, ain't nothing keeping you from it. Let's do it now. Hallelujah. Whether it's been 20 years or 2 months or 2 minutes. We expect them to make a decision. So as they came by the pool of water, and we get so excited about this verse because we want to prove that baptism is by dunking people all the way into the water. So we get really into this text. Well, they were all the way in the water. They were immersed. That's good. I'm happy to prove that point. Good. But let's get off that and not just prove a point. Let's expect people to make a decision for Jesus, and then let's see what happens next. Because then it says that Philip disappeared, by the way. That's another story. But then the eunuch went on his way rejoicing. Man, if conversion to Jesus, if conversion to the Seventh-day Adventist faith doesn't bring joy, we've done something wrong.
Amen.
God save us if we convert people to some legalistic, dry way of life that we got the right game, but we don't got any joy in Jesus.
Mercy.
That doesn't do us any good. No. By the time God has gotten done using us to bring someone to Jesus, they should go on their way rejoicing.
Amen.
Yeah. We're going to care for people's needs. That's what we're going to do. We're going to preach the good news about Jesus. And while we do that, we're going to expect the Spirit to lead us in ways that we don't get. But we're going to be obedient. And we're going to be ready for those opportunities when they jump up at us in strange places. And we're going to be ready to just explain that Jesus has done really good things for me. And He can do the same for you. We're going to be willing to get in the chariot of life and travel with people. We're going to make sure that Jesus Christ is the center of the good news. We're going to expect for people to decide for Jesus. And we're going to rejoice with them. Because the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy. This is how we're going to wait for Jesus to come. Let's sing together. I love to tell this story.